you got to get out. You got to walk the ground. You got to see what you can see. That's how you find the hammerstones, the debutage, which is a good indicator on what sort of stone to target when you are looking to find those right little spalls and pieces. Before you know it, you're at the Stone Age hardware store, and it's everywhere, all around you. You have heard me talk many a times about the ideal flint knapping stone as something that is waxy, glassy, smooth, and featureless. It's easy to apply those kind of 4 basic rules over stone when you have it sitting in your hands. Well, what is it, and how do you go about finding actual flint knapping stone out in the bush? I start every, kind of rock hounding adventure for flint knapping stone really based off what some of the ancient cultures used. What was their type of stone? What was their source stone? And I use that to give me kind of a geographic reference on where I should look. And more importantly, the type of stones I should be finding. From there, I ultimately kind of say, all right, where is this land? Is it private land? Is it public land? Is it federal land? How can I get to it? And kind of what are those rules? What are those left and right lateral limits? Now, there's tons of stuff online through the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management, otherwise known as BLM, that can point you in the right directions. It will literally on those sites say what you can take, what you can't take, the amounts, the duration of time you can spend in those areas. It just really requires you to jump on the internet, do a little query, and ultimately figure out what are those rules, regulations, and if you need any special permits. I also do a lot of searching on USGS. This really helps me narrow down where certain deposits of minerals and specific types of rocks might be that I could use for flint knapping. USGS is a great resource. You can download maps. You can pretty much find most of the things you would need on USGS, and it's really going to point you in the right direction on narrowing down that search. Lastly, I'm always doing a map search. Once I've kind of narrowed down an area, I want to kind of get a closer view. I want to see what are my access points, what are the terrain features that I might encounter. Do I have to walk in? Can I drive in? What are kind of my vantage points to getting to that actual stone? More importantly, you can identify different terrain features, fingers and draws and rock outcroppings and cliffs. This will help narrow your search once you actually get boots on ground and you're looking for that flint knapping stone. Today I'm out in a place that I call the Chalcedony Cliffs. This is a site where Chalcedony was resourced by a lot of the ancient cultures that existed in this area. You can kind of see all of the white stone behind me riding up into this little finger over here and some of the rocks over here. This is all a knappable material. I find it to be on my scale of 1 to 10 most desirable, being like a good black English flint as a 10 and then obsidian being number 1. I find it to be like a 5 or a 6. It can throw razor sharp flakes. It does have a variety of colors. You can find blues, you can find clears and opaques, reds, pinks. You can find a lot of different colors of chalcedony. Most of the time I find it in white and pinks and a little bit of the yellows, but it is a great little stone to make some points. Most of the projectiles I've created out of it have been atlatl dart points and arrowheads. I don't get a lot of large bifaces out of it because you can find large pieces, but it does freeze crack very easily, especially if you're doing any surface collection like you see out here. But the coolest part about this specific location is it's been used for hundreds and thousands of years. We'll do a little collecting. I'll show you why this area is pretty ideal. So this is that source stone. This is where all of the chalcedony, through hundreds and thousands of years of erosion and ancient cultures here coming to peck and try to remove it, it's wound up down at the bottom where those cliffs are, where that big draw is, and this is where it originated from. You're always looking for the indicators, especially when it comes to stone. So I can see that there's a lot of exposed stone right here. It's likely been frozen, it's been cracked, it's taken a lot of wear. I can guarantee you down below, and even probably underneath a lot of this red dirt, there's a better quality of stone. It doesn't mean that this is bad, you just might get smaller pieces. I always look for that source stone. This is my chalcedony source. Now a lot of the fingers and ridges out here where I'm at have chalcedony deposits like this. You can see them at distance, especially in this red sand. You can see that white shine. The sun is at an angle, I can catch the sun hitting a lot of the little bits of stone, giving me a little bit of shimmer. That's a good indication that that's probably some sort of flint knapping stone. Take a walk, take a drive, do a little investigation. The next thing you know, you find some stone. Even looking at this is all Chalcedony through here. These are the cliffs. It rolls out into these flats and then it drops off. But just doing some surface collecting, you can find pieces. Again, the good indicators, things that are breaking, things that are too chossy aren't going to be able to take a strike. And then some components that are pretty decent in color, size, not a lot of freeze cracking, you'll be good to go. All of this right here is that traditional Chalcedony I look for. Now you can see just through time and exposure, there's some discoloration, there's dirt staining, all sorts of freeze cracks. It does have a good ting, but I can look at this material and ultimately see it does have some properties. Am I going to be able to pull off large flakes and turn those into some sort of large tool? Very unlikely with some of this, but I could pop a flake off and turn it into some sort of projectile. I could get into that stone and really remove as much as I needed and wanted, but this will produce a good flake. It is razor sharp and it can be napped into a variety of projectiles. These are all broken from cracking. There's no real indication that they were popped off in the napping process. They all have kind of hard edges, straight, very likely freeze cracks. You know, this is out in Utah, there's snow, there's rain, there's moisture. It's going to get in those cracks, they're going to break, they're going to pop off. But you can find a lot of decent flakes out here. So one of the coolest things that I think that you can actually find when you're looking for stone. Yes, you can find tons of debutage and flakes, you know, especially when you're in some sort of ancient quarry site or an area where people would come and sit and look for, you know, game. You know, behind me is nothing but draws and there's a lot of visible terrain. It makes sense for ancient people to sit in these locations, nap stone, source stone, and also do some scouting. The thing I always lose my mind over is when I find hammerstones. This right here is a hammerstone, and right next to it, and I don't take them, I leave them right here. Right next to it is a second hammerstone. Two hammerstones that were worked and used in this area to pop flakes, used to, you know, spall out big pieces of Chalcedony to turn into all sorts of projectiles. And I know they're hammerstones simply being that this is exactly what I would use. More importantly, when I look at the ends, when you look at the ends of these hammerstones, they're worked, they're chipped, both ends. It's an irregular pattern when you consider how smooth the stone is the whole way around. Someone would hold the stone just like this and use it to bust flakes. This is exactly that same size of stone that I've always talked about the size of an egg, a little bit smaller than a baseball, but this is perfect not only to carry with you, but it's a great tool if you're coming to a quarry site where you would leave it knowing that you're going to return and eventually use those stones again. Look at this small one right here. You can almost feel the spots where somebody would hold it with their fingers. Both of my edges, kind of that big edge here has been worked, and all around this edge has been worked. This is very much indicative of a hammerstone. One reason why I know this is I brought my own hammerstone. And when I look at my hammerstone and the wear and tear it has on this edge and the wear and tear it has on this edge, and when I compare it with my own, they're almost identical. Worn on both edges, good in the hands, easy to transport. I think it's easier to find arrow points, I think it's easier to find projectile points than it is finding the tools that actually make those projectiles and arrow points. That's where that one was. That one there. This one was right like that. So when I get to that area, and I'm looking and trying to determine the stone that's going to be the best and the most desirable. So before I start diving into the rock and start spalling and hitting a lot of things, I'm going to let what's on the ground start to determine how I kind of look and source a stone. Meaning that I'm finding lots of this material, which is Chalcedony. Looks like it has some staining in there and some different colors, but I'm not looking to knap this necessarily. I'm finding more chunks. I'm finding more broken pieces. It's likely been, more impacted by the snow and the rain and the sun in this area. So I'm not going to try and find this stuff, even though it's great in color. And yeah, you could probably pop off a couple small flakes and get some small projectiles out of it. But I'm finding the majority of the debutage to be this color of Chalcedony. Here's a big piece that's got that defined bulb of percussion. Here's a couple other little pieces, but I'm looking for the debutage to kind of lead me in the direction of helping determine what is the best stone. I could spend hours out here picking up every single piece of stone that looks like it has, waxy, glassy, smooth, and featureless properties. But if I study the debutage, I can really focus that search and say, all right, I'm looking for more this color of Chalcedony, this kind of snowy kind of color, this ice looking color. And this will allow me to streamline my search, find the flakes that I'm looking for, and ultimately get a quicker yield of stone before I roll out of here. So here's another good example of a hammerstone. You can see just the wear on this edge right through here. I can see some wear here. This was held in the hand. There's a comparison of the hammerstone that I've been working. Smooth. Somebody was probably sitting here a long time ago, spalling and chipping out these rocks, testing different pieces. And even when I look at this guy, which just caught my eye, this looks like this could even be some sort of a blade core. Not your traditional blade core, but looking at this top, I got all these little sections removed, and I can see that there was flakes popped off of this. So, I mean, this whole area has been utilized because of all this Chalcedony around here. And one of the most important things when you're looking for stone is you got to get out, you got to walk the ground. I've got a armful of stones that I'm going to bring back with me, but there's tons of it all around me. You can see all the white. More importantly, when you look on that little hill there, and you look on that little hill there, that's where a lot of this stone originated from. And just through erosion and weathering and, ancient cultures probably quarrying it out and pulling it out, it's just wound up down here. It's important to remember, I'm not looking to collect as much stone as possible. I'm looking just to find a couple good flakes, good pieces, 10, 12, 13, something like that. Bring those back to the trapper shack and turn them into something. And what I typically do is I like to find a decent sized little chunk like this, give it a few pops, make sure I can eliminate any of the crazy cracking, make sure it gives me a good cutting edge. I'll set it off to the side. That one's coming back with me. Looks like it's got some pigeon blood in it, not bad. That one will come. Let's see, I like this material. Good flakes. Bring this chunk back. That's a good piece. Came right from there. So yeah, just a quick little test. I could bring a bunch of these back, so I'm definitely going to bring this back. When sourcing the stone, do your research, do a little map reconnaissance, check where you can find on maps. Definitely research those native cultures, what projectile points were made, look into the maps, check your rules and regs. Before you know it, you'll be able to find some pretty decent flint knapping stone that if you source ethically and properly and take what you need, and yeah, do your due diligence, you'll have flint knapping stone for years to come.